After weeks of waiting, finally we know who the next Prime Minister will be.
Liz Truss is elected as the leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party.
There will be no honeymoon period for the new leader, though, with millions at risk of plunging into poverty over the cost of living crisis and spiralling energy bills.
I will deliver on the energy crisis, dealing with people's energy bills, but also dealing with the long-term issues we have on energy supply.
But still no detail on what that help will be for the many desperate for the government to take action.
I don't go out, I feel sick, I don't eat very much. I sleep 3 hours a night. 3 hours a night.
The next Prime Minister takes over officially tomorrow. Today, we get reaction from around the country, also tonight. An eyewitness report from the villages in Pakistan submerged under 20 feet of water. Here, how did this pensioner in his 80s end up covered in bruises after a confrontation with police? And back in the UK for the first time since the Jubilee, but Harry and Meghan, it seems, have no plans to see the family.
From Downing Street, this is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening from Downing Street. On the day Liz Truss became the new leader of the Conservative Party. Tomorrow the Queen will appoint her the country's new Prime Minister, and then she will move into this famous street, number 10 behind me. Now, as for what her new government will look like, or indeed do, there still wasn't much detail today in her short victory speech to Conservative MPs. Ms Truss praised Boris Johnson and she insisted that she will deliver on the promises made in the last election. There were no new clues as to how the new government will tackle spiralling energy bills and indeed the cost of living crisis. But she did make clear it's one of her first priorities. Well, in just a moment, we'll look at what help could be coming and what her victory means for all parts of the country. But first, here's our political editor, Robert Peston, on the UK's next Prime Minister.
The outsider who became the racing certainty, Liz Truss, arrived in Westminster to find out if all the polls were right that she's new Tory leader and from tomorrow Britain's new Prime Minister. Walking into the hall with the challenger, Rishi Sunak, and from the spring in her step, the result wasn't a surprise.
Rishi Sunak, 60,399. Liz Truss, 81,326. Therefore, I give notice that Liz Truss is elected as the leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. We'll come up on stage.
Whoops, no commiserating handshake for Sunak from the winner.
Friends and colleagues, thank you for putting your faith in me to lead our great Conservative Party, the greatest political party on earth.
A tribute to the departing Prime Minister, which elicited a slightly muted response.
Boris, you got Brexit done. You crushed Jeremy Corbyn. You rolled out the vaccine and you stood up to Vladimir Putin. You were admired from Kiev to Carlisle.
But what about the huge challenges this country faces?
I will deliver a bold plan to cut taxes and grow our economy. I will deliver on the energy crisis, dealing with people's energy bills, but also dealing with the long-term issues we have on energy supply. Because, my friends, I know that we will deliver, we will deliver, and we will deliver. And we will deliver a great victory for the Conservative Party in 2024. Thank you. Thank you.
So perhaps not a surprise, she doesn't want an early election. Quick assessment.
Look, this is a very clear win, it's a very clear result, and that means that we now have a mandate for this new leader to set a new direction.
I'm really elated. I mean, you know, it was a really long long, hard-fought campaign.
Now it's really important for all Conservative MPs to get behind our new Prime Minister.
But it's also good that it's over.
As for the loser, he wasn't keen to appear on camera, though he did say on social media that it's right we now unite behind the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss. On a school visit, Labour's leader had a lesson for the almost PM.
She needs to deal with the cost of living crisis, she needs to deal with the fact the NHS is on its knees, and she needs to deal with the collapse of law and order. And there can be no justification for not freezing energy prices.
What's your message to the woman who has dismissed you as an attention seeker who should be ignored? Now she is to be the UK's next Prime Minister.
Well, I genuinely wish Liz Truss all the best. I congratulate her on her appointment as Prime Minister. I know how tough leadership is in the best of times, and we don't live in the best of times. The UK is in probably the worst and most acute crisis of our lifetimes.
So faced with such a crisis, who is the Prime Minister who's supposed to sort it? The daughter of a maths professor, she went to a comprehensive school in Leeds. She was a student activist for the Lib Dems.
We Liberal Democrats believe in opportunity for all.
Good morning. She's been in the cabinet since 2014, and although she's now the darling of the Tory Brexiters, she backed Remain in the EU referendum. Since then, she became popular with Tory members for negotiating trade deals that Brexit made possible, and more recently, for standing up to Putin as Foreign Secretary. Now for the hard part, persuading her party, which she visited this afternoon, that she'll be as good a campaigner as Boris Johnson was, and more importantly for the rest of us, as she prepares to move in here, that she has a plan to get us through all those health, diplomatic and economic emergencies. Robert Peston, ITV News.
It's not just divisions in the country Liz Truss has to heal. There's also some in her own party. And one of her biggest challenges will be choosing her new cabinet. Tonight, Priti Patel quit as Home Secretary, jumping before she was pushed. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Anushka Astana, on what that might mean for the Tories.
Sometimes the QE2 Centre in Westminster hosts bands. But today it was the Conservatives marching in, led by this man, Sir Graham Brady, ready to answer his party's leadership question. Inside, he began with a quick check. Others milled around, some getting ready for big jobs. Kwasi Kwarteng as Chancellor, perhaps. Jacob Rees-Mogg tipped for business. James Cleverly as Britain's new representative to the world. Once she'd taken centre stage, our new Prime Minister, faced with an astonishingly severe cost of living crisis, seemed very focused on one word.
I will deliver a bold plan. I will deliver on the energy crisis. We all will deliver, 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 deliver.
Liz Truss says she wants to deliver. To do that, she has to get votes through Parliament, and that means uniting a party that has torn itself apart this summer. There are MPs in this crowd who tell me they're not yet convinced by her approach.
But Penny Mordaunt, who herself ran for the leadership, said she believed MPs would come together, despite ferocious disagreements this summer.
There have been vicious arguments, haven't there?
The party is very disciplined. We've had this contest. We've obviously had discussions over policy. There's been very passionate debate. But now we have to come together, and the party will do that.
So it's a matter of choice for MPs. They know how to do it. They can mess about, play games, or they can decide they want to serve the people of this country through an historic crisis on several fronts. That means being grown-ups, uniting, playing the game.
But one MP on the Liberal wing of the Tory party told me they feared Liz Truss was about to appoint the most right-wing cabinet for 100 years, and she might face trouble on her backbenches. This MP hopes that won't happen.
We're at an inflection point, I think, now for our party. We need the buy-in of the British people, and we can only do that if we show that we have that broad mandate. That means bringing together the talent from across the party, not moving to our comfort zone or indeed one ideological base.
What that top team looks like will become clear tomorrow, and then this government must move quickly to take on the worst crisis to hit the country for decades.
It is the scale of that crisis that means that many MPs are openly being all about unity today, but that won't change the fact that there are backbenchers who disagree with Liz Truss's economic approach and that reshuffles upset people. As you said, already Like Priti Patel quitting as Home Secretary, Dominic Raab saying he doesn't expect to be remaining as Deputy Prime Minister. They are big voices on the backbenches from now on.
OK, Anushka Astana in Parliament, thank you. Well, after a quiet summer in Westminster, there are certainly a busy few days ahead. Tomorrow morning, Boris Johnson will make his final speech as Prime Minister here at Number 10. He and Liz Truss will then head to Balmoral in Scotland, where Mr Johnson will tender his resignation to the Queen. Ms Truss will then be asked by the Queen officially to form a government. She will then head back to Downing Street as Prime Minister and will then address the nation. Tomorrow evening, she will appoint her first cabinet, who will meet for the first time on Wednesday, before Ms Truss faces Sir Keir Starmer at her first Prime Minister's questions. Then on Thursday, she's expected to announce her plan for tackling that energy crisis. And that can't come soon enough for millions of households and businesses right across the country. Now, there are reports that the plans could include a freeze on domestic energy bills, costing the public purse around £100 billion. Our consumer editor Chris Choi heard from those desperate for help.
As customers struggle with budgets, we now know who will lead us through the energy crisis, but we still don't know how. And though bills are not due to rise until next month, anxieties are already soaring.
Just disbelief. There have been some warnings about the wholesale prices of gas in particular, but when you see it in black and white in front of you, it is just an absolute shock.
An energy price cap freeze is one option for the new Prime Minister. Average annual prices are due to increase to more than £3,500 in October. To peg them at current levels, just under £2,000, government could guarantee loans to the industry, estimated at up to £100 billion, which customers could repay through their bills for the next 10 to 15 years, or which could be repaid through general taxation.
Money. So hopefully we're going to be paying your energy bills £400 a month for 4 months.
Today, this competition ran on TV, as for millions, affording energy now seems a dream on a par with winning the lottery.
For the energy bills. Well done! Energy bills.
One energy boss says an immediate focus on power bills by Liz Truss is reassuring.
So I do welcome the fact that the incoming government recognises the idea that the place that wholesale prices have got to makes energy unaffordable for a large number of homes and businesses, and a large intervention to buffer that shock is a vital response to it.
So as with most small to medium-sized enterprises like ourselves, we're using quite a lot of energy. We've got gas and electric running through our coffee roaster.
The price cap doesn't apply to businesses, so they'd miss out on any help delivered that way.
What we want is the new Prime Minister to be able to put a price cap in for commercial energy, as our energy bills are certainly doubled, they're set to triple, and could easily be somewhere like 5 times the amount, which is just not sustainable.
With households under pressure, even if energy prices are held back, it's only part of this cost of living crisis, shaping lives and politics, potentially for years. Chris Choi, ITV News.
And our political editor Robert Peston is here with me. OK, so what did you make, first of all, of the result and that victory speech?
So just to be clear, it was a decisive victory, 57% of those who voted. But if you look at the numbers of people who could have voted, actually she got less than half of Tory members' votes. And you'll remember, because we've talked about it a lot at the time, she got considerably fewer than half the votes of MPs in the first stage of the contest. So this was not an overwhelming victory, and she inherits a party that is very divided about things like economic policy, relationships with Europe, and frankly, almost all the big challenges that this country faces. So she's going to find it challenging, not only to solve the problems we face, but also to keep her party together.
Well, indeed. But talking of those challenges, and there is no honeymoon period, as we said at the beginning of the programme. There's so many challenges, cost of living, crisis, energy.
It is literally extraordinary. Talking to Tory MPs during, in the immediate aftermath of the result today, they say no Prime Minister in modern times has faced challenges like this. On Thursday, we might talk a bit about this later, we will get her solution to the energy crisis. But that's just one of several. I mean, look at what's happening in the NHS at the moment. So much in her in tray.
very few people will envy her.
Yeah, and so much money to be spent to solve any of it, I guess, isn't it?
When people are saying that the debt anyway of this country is ballooning really very fast. So, this is not a situation where there are easy answers.
All right, we'll talk later in the programme. Robert, for the moment, thank you very much. And let's get reaction then to that result from across the country. Our Scotland correspondent Peter Smith is in Edinburgh, UTV. Political correspondent Vicky Hawthorne is in Belfast. And our Wales reporter Rhys Williams is in Cardiff. First of all, to you, Peter, what challenges face Liz Truss, do you think, in Scotland?
Well, we've seen already that Nicola Sturgeon was quite magnanimous today, especially given Liz Truss had recently described Scotland's First Minister as an attention-seeking woman who was best ignored. Now, that sort of tough talk works well on the campaign trail, but now the UK's next Prime Minister will have to show what kind of leader she will be and whether she will be a leader for the whole country, including Scotland, and including for those Scots who perhaps are not Conservatives and don't really like the Conservative Party. There is a huge number of them. The Conservative Party are not popular in Scotland. We've just had the least popular Prime Minister from Scotland's perspective in history. So Liz Truss has some making up to do. She could start by addressing the constitutional question. Her predecessors have simply said no. Many unionists in Scotland would like to see the next Prime Minister woo Scots to present a positive case for the union, not just that because Westminster says no, you can't be independent. And one way that she could take on that and appeal to the people, the hearts and minds, is through the energy crisis, because Scotland will be one of the hardest hit places, people already turning their heating on. Nicola Sturgeon saying that for Scotland's sake, she hopes Liz Truss leads the country in a different way than she campaigned.
Mary, the building behind me is normally the home of Northern Ireland's devolved government, but the Stormont Assembly and Executive has not been working now for several months, and the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, will have to find a way to get it back up and running. The largest unionist party, the DUP, have been telling her as Foreign Secretary, and will continue to tell her as she becomes Prime Minister, that they will only return to government here at Stormont when she fixes the Northern Ireland Protocol, those post-Brexit trading arrangements which unionists here believe is damaging Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom. The cost of living, of course, is a real, massive, significant issue on the minds of everyone here. And because there is no functioning devolved government in Northern Ireland, all the parties will be looking to Liz Truss and her government for more financial help and assurances that whatever help is given to households in Great Britain will also be delivered in Northern Ireland.
Well, Wales doesn't have the same constitutional questions, well, of the same urgency that we've been hearing about there from Vicky and Peter, but it will be very interesting to see how the new Premiership works with the Labour administration here in Cardiff. It does appear that Liz Truss will continue the Boris Johnson approach of trying to make decisions on matters considered the responsibility of the Welsh Government. For example, she's pledged to build an M4 relief road south of Newport, despite not having the power to do that, and the fact that the Welsh Government has already rejected it. It will also be interesting to see if she can develop a better working relationship with the First Minister here, Mark Drakeford, than Boris Johnson did. Their relationship seemed to totally break down. It became clear a couple of months ago they'd only spoken once directly over the last year. Today, Mark Drakeford congratulated Liz Truss on her election and urged her to work with him to tackle the cost of living crisis here in Wales.
OK, Rhys Williams in Cardiff, Vicky Hawthorne in Belfast and Peter Smith in Glasgow. Thank you all. Well, later on we're going to be speaking to one of the rivals that Liz Truss beat to win the contest. But here's what else is coming up on the ITV Evening News. We're out with the Pakistan Army as they try to rescue villagers cut off by the country's devastating floods.
It's been over 2 weeks since floods devastated a third of Pakistan, affecting 30 million people. It's extraordinary to think that in that time there are still people marooned, desperately in need of being rescued.
We meet the pensioner left badly bruised after police broke into the wrong house. And find out why Harry and Meghan are back in the country for the first time since the Jubilee. Do join us for all of that and more after the break. See you then.